das stufenlose Fendt Vario Getriebe.
The continuously variable Fendt Vario transmission made its public debut at the International Agritechnica Fair in 1995, 30 years ago. That was the Favorit, 926 Vario. Robert, you traveled to Hanover 30 years ago. What were your feelings and what did you experience there?
Yes, those were indeed moving times and wonderful feelings, simply because we had previously tested the tractor, both in use and on the test bench intensively, and we had the proof that it works, and that in itself is the ultimate in tractor transmission construction.
So heading to Hanover with confidence.
Exactly.
And what were your experiences there?
Yes, the experts were amazed and largely didn't believe that a new continuously variable transmission was actually installed here in Steel and Iron. The opinion was that it was a mock-up.
And who all came by to see you?
Yes, both farmers and developers, as well as the executives from our competitors came by. And it was an experience and a proud moment for me when the executives from the competitors in central Germany crawled under the tractor, essentially at my feet. And they looked from underneath to see if there was actually a Vario transmission installed.
So, wonderful experiences, and the start of a very successful development at Fendt, with our continuously variable Vario transmission. Let's look back a bit. The development of this Vario transmission took a long time, decades, and it was also a bumpy road. How do you see it? How were the beginnings? What was the idea?
The beginnings were literally bumpy, not just for us, the small group that started the development back then, but especially for Mr. Marshall. The Vario transmission is closely associated with the name Marshall. Marshall was a Markt-Oberdorf native and an employee in tractor development. As a young person, a young designer, he had worked on the so-called Allgaier project in the 1960s. The Allgaier project was a type of hydrostatic transmission.
The Silver Arrow.
Right. And he contributed as a designer. In 1967, the development was discontinued, and looking back, without being mean or snippy, a purely hydrostatic transmission will never catch on in tractor construction or for vehicles that require very high traction capacity. It's a different situation in construction machinery, but in tractor construction, where really heavy equipment needs to be attached and then pulled, that was not possible. And then Marshall, who was responsible for the hydraulic design of the machining tools in the Fendt toolmaking department, left that area. Marshall then returned to tractor development with me, where he was actively involved. However, since his involvement in the Allgaier project, he was working on the concept of a continuous variable transmission, literally day and night. In May 1972, he saw the swiveling axial piston pump, and it clicked for him. He said, "Now I've got it." These units, with their inclined axis, high pressures, large angles, plus the power splitting, marked the birth of the Vario transmission. He wasn't yet prepared to design and draft it. He then converted his garage into a design office and worked there day after day, evening after evening. He returned to tractor manufacturing and resumed his design work. From that point on, he tried to convince the technical decision makers that this was the path to take. It was naturally very difficult, because this was in the mid-1980s when the focus in transmission manufacturing for tractor producers was on synchronized transmissions and power shift transmissions. The trend was moving towards partial power shifting and full power shifting. So promoting a continuously variable transmission, a Vario transmission, was quite bold. It didn't bear much fruit. Nevertheless, he did a lot of convincing and managed to persuade the then technical director, Professor Stroppel, and convinced him that they should pursue development in this direction. He was eventually convinced and had the construction and development of the first prototype of the Vario transmission carried out under the name Tristat. It was built, and the test results both in the vehicle and on the test bench were truly astonishing and promising. And that was essentially the reason for Professor Stroppel to establish a small department to properly develop the development of the Vario transmission.
And you were the leader?
I was the leader of the small group. We started with 3 people, including Mr. Heindel and Mr. Marshall. Unfortunately, Mr. Marshall fell seriously ill after 3 months in the department and never returned to active duty.
In which year was this first Tristat gearbox that could also be tested?
That was around the early 80s, around 82 or 83. And as I said, that was the birth of the Vario transmission.